You're listening to AMI Today on AMI Audio. It is Thursday, July 17th, 2025. I'm Grant Hardy. Meta have been really heroes in the blind community with their Meta AI glasses like the Ray-Ban. It's been stealing the spotlight at conventions, even when Meta is not there to represent it. It's a big deal. But if this week has taught us anything, app accessibility, including from established players like Meta, is not a given. It's not always given the priority it deserves, which we've seen with a new Meta update that we're going to talk to Stephen Scott about, which affected accessibility for billions of users this week, really showcasing the vulnerability of the app stores we all rely on for automatic updates. That's going to be coming up in a little bit here on the show. And the second half of the show is The Pulse. But now it's time for the AMI Audio Digest. There's a lot of talk about heat and the changing climate and what to do about it, whether we should mandate air conditioners, whether we should, build homes differently. But maybe the solution is easier than we think, and it's actually right in front of our faces. The Globe and Mail airs at 10 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio, repeating every 6 hours, and that's hosted by Corinne Van Dusen and Matt Spears. And Corinne joins us now to discuss an editorial from the Globe editorial board about how to deal with heat. Hey, Corinne, what have you got for us?
Hi, Grant. Yes, it was an editorial, as you said, titled The Dangers of Isolation in a Sweltering City. It starts off with examples recently of heat events that weren't dealt with well. Starting with last month, where Torontonians made a beeline for public pools, only to find them closed after pool staff cited unsafe working conditions, but reinforcements were brought in later. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has since correctly identified that there are gaps in the city's heat strategy. So she said the gaps, why didn't they see that a week earlier? But the better question, according to the Globe editorial board, is why did no city staffer see the gap 6+ years ago? Or even a better question, why did no municipal official see the gap more than 2 decades ago? We have talked about heat and air conditioning on this show before, talking about how there are legal rights that everyone has a right to heat. So landlords have to provide heat to places that people live as well as workplaces, but there's nothing in there for cooling. And with the amount of hot days that we have had this year alone, with heat warnings in effect across Ontario for a few days, every now and then they open up cooling centers, but we have the pool issue. So there's talk of what else can we do that doesn't sort of rely on the government to do something right away. It's coming together. They say isolation is the biggest killer when it comes to heat. If you live alone, you live in a place that doesn't have air conditioning, you're not getting out there, there's no help for you when this happens because you're just there. There was a 2023 study of more than 500 tsunami-affected Japanese neighborhoods, and it showed social infrastructure measurably and cheaply reduced mortality rates among the most vulnerable populations. So social infrastructure is having lots of people around you, having public spaces that are open, having different stores and everything that you can go to. It's community. Having a sense of community when people are checking on each other does help more than anything else as of right now. So they said cities are too often caught scrambling for Band-Aid solutions or planning for a climate that no longer exists, rather than rapidly warming one that we actually have. And they say when more people die in Canada and the US of extreme heat every year than any other natural disaster, that is unacceptable.
Yeah, it really just goes to show that humans are not always the best aware of which risks impact us more. I mean, I was shocked to remind myself that heat deaths are the biggest natural disaster that affects us, because I feel like it's also the one we take the least seriously. So I always dig reading about small towns or small communities where everyone checks on their neighbors, gets to know the people around them, because that's really not always the case in big cities. And so they're saying, like, look, especially with people who want to live alone. I mean, people would rather age in place than move to an assisted living facility, for example, for sure. The social cohesion, checking in on each other, having those common areas you can go to rather than trying to get air conditioning into every single space is going to be really important. Anything you do, Corinne, to beat the heat in the summer, or anything else that stood out to you about this article in particular?
Well, I do think it's great that they say community is a place, and it's simple measures that can help everyone. And it involves getting to know your neighbors, being involved in your neighborhood, checking in on others. And I like the ending of the article where it says Canadians shouldn't have to go it alone. Be in the absence of political will, communities will have to create their own networks of care because being alone is the problem.
And being alone just makes it very silent. Like, when you're not doing so well in the heat, people might not think to check on you, and then it might not end well. So really important, to swallow our pride, make sure to put ourselves out there, and stay connected to the community. Corinne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That is the Globe and Mail, airing at 10 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio, repeating every 6 hours during the week. Just a quick plug for the AMI Research Panel. Don't forget, we are still looking for members from the disability community to join AMI in guiding every decision we make, especially programming and accessibility. And you can even get compensated for all long-form studies. For more information, you can head to ami.ca/panel, and we'd love to hear from you. Continuing the climate theme here on the show for today, the Washington Post airs daily at 11 a.m. Eastern, repeating every 6 hours, and is hosted by Mike Ross. Mike, you've got an article for us talking about the continued assault on climate science happening in the U.S. federal government. Sorry to be so blunt. That's just the first thing that came out of my mouth. Mike, what have you got for us today?
Well, that's exactly what it is, Grant. It is the continued cutting of funding to what the Trump administration views as part of the, I guess, the woke agenda, and what they call, uninformed, which is kind of funny because it's based on science. And coming on the heels of that massive flood in Central Texas, where 130 people died and many dozens are still missing. It's interesting that the Trump administration is continuing with the cuts to NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's funding. And one of the things that they fund is a set of data that's collected that shows how often storms of a given duration and intensity could be expected to occur in certain locations. Now, why this is important is it shows architects, infrastructure builders, city planners where you should not build, and where, if you are building certain infrastructure, you need to sort of build it up, toughen it up, make it stronger. It was interesting. I'm going to skip right to the end of the article because, to me, this really explains much of the culture that we live in. And this is, I think, applicable to some parts of Canada as it is in the United States, that we have this cycle of damage from a storm, we repair it, we replace it, and then it gets damaged again down the road, that we're not actually building things with proper sets of data towards the future and predicting things which would help us build better, right? Think back to when Joe Biden was president and he had a bill that was called the Build Back Better bill. It's something that clearly is not happening when it comes to storm predicting and how that influences the building of infrastructure and housing around the United States.
Yeah, humans really fancy ourselves as ecosystem engineers, I guess. You can take literally a swamp and convert it into a big bustling city, whatever it is. And then you could kind of get away with that, except that nature doesn't always let us keep it that way for forever. But I wonder if part of it is just the terminology. We refer to storms as natural disasters, which are like unusual occurrences that you just fix. You just try and undo as best as possible. But really what they're saying here, and I think what you're saying here, is they're just normal. We think of them as
Right.
disasters, but they're normal occurrences in nature, and they can't be prevented. So you've got to toughen up where you're building or not build at all so that you can withstand what is actually a very normal part of the climate.
I think that's a very important hair to split because when you think about um, storms and events that happen, that like a tornado, you cannot avoid a tornado; they happen. But
Mhm.
you can certainly build your buildings and your homes in a manner that they're less prone to complete obliteration when it happens. You can build safe rooms in your homes. You can
Mhm.
build stronger buildings. Right? We've seen it with earthquakes. Buildings that are built to sway a little bit more in the event of an earthquake. We saw after the many hurricanes we've seen year after year after year on the east coast of the U.S. and down in Florida, where we need to either stop building homes where hurricanes, hit land, or where flooding occurs. We build in floodplains, and we don't seem to learn our lesson there. Like this is the thing: it's not even so much that it's about these weather disasters.
Mm.
It's the ignorance or refusal to be told by Mother Nature that she's really in charge, that at the end of the day, if you're not going to adjust and either build elsewhere or build stronger, which of course always costs more money, then we're going to be stuck in that cycle of damage, repair, damage again. And it's one that is extremely expensive for individuals and corporations. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, when you think about the big picture, the long term, how many times are people paying over and over for that same property going through a similar type of damage year after year after year? Simply because we want that waterfront property. We
Mm.
want to have that real estate, that top grade real estate, and we end up paying for it over and over again through repairs and never in actually making it more more strong and more impervious to major disasters.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was kind of exactly what I was getting at is we have something, we call it a disaster. This is something, oh, this shouldn't have happened, but it did. Well, we'll just fix it up. But we don't really seem to learn that actually yes, it was disastrous, but it's normal and we need to learn from it and move forward and do
Yep,
things differently. How
absolutely.
ironic this is too, coming after just over about a week, I think, of the flooding in Texas, um, which is right down to those atmospheric conditions that they're trying to work
Yes.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, and building in
Um,
those floodplain areas. So you got to people have to stop doing this. And then the worst thing is, Grant, people know that they need to stop doing
mhm.
it. They just can't bring themselves to stop doing it.
Yeah, we're not we're not great at assessing risks that don't seem clear to the average layperson. Really interesting article today, as always. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Grant. Talk to you tomorrow.
Cheers. That's the Washington Post at 11 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio, repeating every 6 hours. Our very popular tech show, Double Tap, first airs at 12 noon Eastern, repeating every 6 hours, hosted by Stephen Scott and Sean Priest. Stephen, I just want to let you speak on something that is impacting the blind community in a major way this year with an this week rather, with an update to WhatsApp. What's going on?
Yeah, hi Grant. Yeah, it's a bit of a worrying story in some ways because WhatsApp is a very popular messaging application used by millions of people around the world. Blind people love it as well, in particular because of the voice messaging function. So this is the ability to send a voice message. Now, you can, of course, send a text message if you like. You can even send video these days. But sending a voice message is something very common. It's something actually which kind of splits the sighted, the non-disabled population and blind people, I think, because a lot of sighted people hate getting voice messages. Please don't send me 15 minutes of your thoughts on a message. I don't want to listen to this. But for a lot of blind people, it's a great way to communicate. You can say a lot of things. You don't have to worry about typing. You don't have to worry about spelling. You can just get that message over. And for a very long time, it has been very popular and well used, and accessible as well, until a new update came along. Now, I got the update, and it actually told me via the app that I had to do this update. I couldn't avoid this update. It said you must update this app to continue using WhatsApp. For whatever reason that was, be it new terms and conditions or something new in the app, I updated it, and the voice messaging function does still work. But unfortunately, if you use VoiceOver, the screen reader built into the iPhone, you're able to start sending a message, but you can't send the message because the send button disappears from the VoiceOver screen. Now, interestingly, it is still available on the device. You can get to it if you have VoiceOver turned off, or if you do what some people do, which is you do a double tap and hold gesture, which means it starts recording and just keeps recording until you lift your finger off the screen. That still works. You can still do that. But if you are someone who does the double tap and hold and slide gesture, which locks the recording, and that means you can take your finger off and you can just chat away and not have to worry about time, not having to keep your finger on the screen, then the send button disappears, and you can only turn it on by, or actually send a message by turning on what's called screen recognition, which is kind of like the get out of jail free card. If you're stuck in an app, you can, search the screen by touch, and it will actually identify things that are not accessible to the screen reader, or turn VoiceOver off and get your finger to the bottom right of the screen and hope that you've pressed the send button.
Yeah, really.
Not ideal.
And so you can't even locate the button just by touch on the screen unless you have that screen recognition on. You know what's really frustrating, Stephen, is just these kinds of updates. Like, sometimes I've seen updates where it's just for a few days, it's a bug, oops, we're just going to put another update out and fix it, sorry for the inconvenience. And other times, issues like this just seem to go on for months and it's not fixed, and we just don't know, right? Like, we don't know what is going to happen in the next week or the next month. Like, who knows when this is ever going to be fixed?
Well, I can bring you some good news.
Okay.
This is going to be fixed. And the reason we know this is because in the beta channel, where people get access to early releases of the app, so not available publicly at this stage, although it may well be in the middle of this interview, because that does happen. Sometimes these features can be enabled very quickly. In the new beta, this issue has been fixed. Now, I will say, we here at Double Tap got in touch with Meta instantly. As soon as I heard about this, I got in touch with them. I'm not saying Double Tap solved the issue. I'm just saying we highlighted it, and the issue seems to be fixed in the beta, which means that the next update that is hopefully going to come out today or tomorrow will have that fix in it. So I guess they'll be doing some early testing, making sure it's working this time. It is important to say, though, Grant, this issue was flagged by blind people when it was in beta release at the beginning. People knew this problem was coming. They alerted Meta to it. They still released the app anyway, which is always troubling. But this is the reality of using apps and screen readers and being blind and using these functions. Sometimes, like you said at the top of the show, you cannot take it for granted that an app is going to be accessible that is accessible today.
And I think it also shows the vulnerability of the app stores, the Play stores that we use, that we expect to keep us safe, but one real risk for the blind community are these updates, which now you kind of have a lot less control over, right? Because you don't have
Hmm.
access. You can't just install the older version of the app and get back to the way it was. One thing, genuinely, though, that I think we have to acknowledge the importance of is our community of people like you folks that knows how to submit these issues, follow up with them with the right people rather than just uh someone like me reaching out to tech support and maybe they've never even heard of voiceover. Like, you guys, you're experts in the field, you know who to follow up on with, and ultimately get issues fixed. And I think we have to just acknowledge that's really an important part of Double Tap and your work and what you do, because
I appreciate that, but I will say on top of that, though, an amazing community of people had already been in touch with Meta saying there were problems. What we did, and one thing I was fortunate enough to be able to do, was contact directly the Vice President of Accessibility at Meta, so the person who is in charge of making sure this is working, and saying there's something wrong here. Now, that is probably not the appropriate way to go every time, but in a situation like this, it felt important enough to bother this person. And I don't care about bothering people, so I'm quite happy to get in touch with that individual and say, it's time to deal with this because it's not working and it's not good enough. And I will say I got an instant response back. I'm not saying that Double Tap is the reason why it's been fixed, but if it has pushed some teams to get things done because the big boss has told them to, good. That's good.
Exactly.
All we're about is the end result.
And that's huge, and really appreciate your work. And I feel better knowing, because you can't stay on that old version forever. I am really happy to know that this issue is going to be fixed soon. Stephen, thank you so much for helping get this fixed and joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Grant. Have a great day.
You as well. That's Double Tap, coming up at first airing at noon Eastern and repeating every 6 hours on AMI Audio. Excited to connect up again with Kelly Macdonald, joining us on the show this week. He's been on AMI-télé. He's on AMI Audio now, and joining us to Kelly, where do you want to go today?
Grant, some really interesting conversations, and your last one with Stephen inspired me to ask a question. I don't know how much you use Be My Eyes, but I noticed last month that if you're taking a bulk amount of pictures, say you're trying to figure out a bunch of coffee cups, K-cups or something, and you want to know what they are, put them in some kind of order, whatever that might be. I don't know if it slows the system down, which some of my research has said if you take a bulk amount of pictures, it may slow the responses getting back to you, or what may seem like it's being limited. I don't know if people have much on that. I'll throw a question to Double Tap. The guys may have already talked about this, but I am kind of curious if you've, I don't know how much you use it. I generally take, and again, I would say in a day, the most I've ever taken probably is 70, 80, and some of those have been because I've got it set to take pictures when I squeeze one of the buttons, and I'm kind of sorry I did that because I'm getting a lot of one moment, please, and that's why it's processing, or Be My Eyes is writing an answer. So I'm kind of sorry about that, but I don't know if you've heard of this, and I hear they don't publicly say there's a daily limit or a limit, just that this could be a challenge.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about companies in general. I haven't heard of the specific issue with Be My Eyes, but it does bring up an interesting issue that I think companies don't always disclose their limits. And it makes sense in a way. I mean, if you took tens of thousands of photos and were really just abusing the system for fun, I can see why they'd be like, okay, no, we're going to shut you down. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to take, 90 or 100 or a couple hundred photos to try and figure something out. Like, it's not always easy to get what you want in the frame. And I think that what you've done is totally reasonable. And it's unfortunate you're running into some limit, which we'll probably never find out about. And that's an interesting aspect of using technology today, I think. And I have run into limits with other apps, messaging or whatever.
And
it is.
I get
go ahead,
some of that, right? Because messaging, I know we just get asking questions, and even down to the style as a blind person. If I was dictating, I'm going to fill it up. I don't realize what it looks like for a sighted person. Oh my good heavens. Looking at that message, whereas some sighted people will just send, what are you doing later? Whoa, I'm going to do this. Whoa, I was out last night. Whoa, we went to the park. Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't understand the short message. Me, it's like, say what you have to say in one, but I don't know what that looks
Right.
like. Adversely, I can't see an application where I'm going to, maybe one day a year, I might take 100, 300 pictures using the app or play around with it. Or when you first get messing around with it, I mean, good heavens, I've gone to my basketball games and taken, 25 pictures trying to get it to read to me what's on the Jumbotron
Sure.
and stuff like that. More for fun, but curiosity of the score and catching it at the right moment when that is being displayed. So, but I do get limits. I sometimes think we should tell what those are. But on the same token, if I tell somebody, well, your limit's 100, you can't go past, then it creates an anxiety that maybe people don't need. And maybe that limitation is not necessarily a set number. Maybe it's so many at a time. Maybe it stops and says, okay, something's going on here. This is flagged. This could be, for all we know, it could be because of hacking. It could be all sorts of other reasons other than, I'm overusing the app. So I think those things have to be thought about, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. And literally for taking a photo of like a box, I could see it taking 10 times because
Yeah.
first you get the French side, then it's, oh, this is too blurry, pull
Yes.
back a bit. Like, that's reasonable. And yeah, I
Sure.
don't know what the solution is. If you tell the exact limit, maybe people will push it. But then someone like you gets to like, I'm just trying to get this done. And now
Yeah.
it's not letting me put it through.
And even that's a great example because of that anxiety you could get just trying, oh my gosh, I know I've only got 6 more to get this box instructions of this food right. I need to make this before I'm out in the hallway. Excuse me? Excuse somebody out here? Do we have time to talk about swimming?
Unfortunately, we are right at the end of the time here, but really
We'll do
great
that later.
conversation today. Let's chat tomorrow. I think we're
Okay,
getting you
pal.
back on the show.
Yeah.
Have a great day, man. Thanks for coming
Thanks,
on the
Grant.
show.
Take care, everyone.
That's Kelly Macdonald, a staple here at AMI-télé and AMI Audio now. That's going to do it for the AMI Audio Digest. Now, if you're listening on AMI Audio, the Pulse is coming up in just a sec here. If you are not, you can find the Pulse on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And coming up, we've got another panel discussion today as we're looking back at some of our favorite shows this summer. And that is on orientation and mobility with Kelly Macdonald and Alex Smythe joining me to give their perspectives. That's coming up in just a sec on the Pulse here. Thanks so much for listening to the AMI Audio Digest.